Well, welcome Family ID. I am joined by Randon and Kristi Miller, a family that I've gotten to know through several conversations and through the blessing of hearing their story and the stories of their family. I think you will be blessed to know them and to hear about how they live with intentional direction with a large family, lots of moving parts, and how much of a blessing it can be to live on purpose and the impact of that going forward. So, Rain and Kristi, thank you guys for joining me today. It's a pleasure to sit and talk with you.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Thank you.
I appreciate you guys setting aside the time. So I got to know you through a story about, I guess it's technically a ceremony with your daughter as she was turning 12 or 13. And before we dive into that, though, I want to hear about the family. Who's in it? What are they like? Tell me about your family.
Okay,
All
take
right.
it away, Miller.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'll go way back. We met in high school, and I won't put a date out there, so we don't say how old we are. So we met in high school. 4.5 years later, we got married, and we're married 10 years doing youth ministry. Through those years, focused on our career. We were no kids in our life, and in 7/7/07, which that gives you dates now if you do the figures. We were
We're going to celebrate 24
4
years
yeah.
of marriage this year.
Yeah.
Oh,
So,
what a blessing.
yeah.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you. But
Yeah.
but we'd been married about 10 years almost, and we were at a wedding, and we heard about this little boy that was needing a home, and he was in foster care. We had met the father of his brother. They had different dads, but he was in the system and in another state, and it just captured our hearts. And we were just like, wow. I mean, it was like, that's when this journey with children began, because we started pursuing him. A year and a half after that, we actually got to meet him. So we pursued him, became foster parents. We had to be certified, all this stuff.
Didn't know what he looked like.
No,
Didn't
not
know
a clue.
anything really about him other than he just needed a mom and a dad. And
Absolutely.
so we were like, why not? Why
Yes.
not us? And
he was the cutest little thing you ever saw. So that was a blessing, not knowing what you would see the first year. And we were trusting and we had faith. But anyway, so that's how it started. And I'll just fast forward. Over the years, we've had over 26 kids through our home as foster parents. We've adopted 7 kids through those years. That little 5-year-old that it all started with, his name's Hunter. Next month he'll be 19. So he is graduating next month from high school. And I'll just tell you a little bit about the rest of the kids that have we adopted and fell in love with. But starting with the youngest, we have a 7-year-old named Ashton, and he is a ball of joy. And we have 12-year-old Emma Kate. She's precious as can be. Nicholas, 13, and he is on fire for the Lord.
yes.
We have 15-year-old Avery. She is the sweetest little thing you ever saw, too. And when we have 16-year-old Alexander, we call him Xander. He's our sports guy. He's all in it. And then Hunter, 19. And then Taylor Dawn, she's out on her own. She's 29 years old. And and then Kristi and I. So that is our family. Still 6 of them still at home. And it's just
soon to be 5. Like, I'm just not ready for Hunter to.
Yeah, Hunter's going to be getting out on his own soon. So
It's okay, Mom. You just keep him around as long as you can.
I know.
So
That's what
eventually
I've
he'll
been
spread
telling
his
him.
wings and fly. Gina, my wife, has tried to. So we homeschool, and she has tried to convince the kids to do homeschool at home and then college at home, and like do it all at home. Just do it at home.
Yeah, that sounds like
I know.
Wow, guys, that is amazing. That 26 kids through there. My mind is reeling on just God's kingdom impact that you have brought to this world, and the impact on those children that are now growing up and seeing God's hand of favor and love on their lives through you. So thank you for serving God's children through that.
Thank you.
I know that is truly laying down your life to serve. It's probably always convenient and always easy and
Right.
right
All the time. Yes. Like,
all the time.
We
we
All the
thought
won't,
we were
time.
busy
we won't
before.
mention the tears and
The
I
crying and the
know.
sleepless nights and the praying. It's a lot.
Well, okay. So if you had to put the Millers, all nine of you, into one bucket or category, or define it how you would, what are the Millers about?
So we were talking, and so the Miller, well, and that's just the beauty too of Family ID, because I think before that, I don't know if we could have really told you. And because we were just like, we're on fire for Jesus, and we're gonna go. And so it wasn't really until Family ID that we started putting a name on it, a direction, who we are, what do we want it to look like, how do we be intentional with it. And so that came a couple years into it when we went to see Greg Gunn at our church, and began to really write down what we felt about the family. And so we had written this really elaborate mission statement. And I remember we were like, this sounds really, really good. But throughout the years, because it's been, 13 years, so it's been really just power packed down into power in together. And that's what stuck through the whole mission statement. And then also, teamwork makes the dream work. That is, like, if you talk to our kids, that is what it is. And I think we chose that simply because all of our children came, and they didn't know what together meant. They didn't know what family meant. For them, it was like, I have to take care of myself. I have to take care of my needs because nobody's going to do that for me. And so it was a place of very self-centeredness and just also fear and mistrust. And so for us, going in, that teaching them, for one, that Jesus is there and that they don't have to do anything alone. So power and together, and then also just knowing that you trust your family, that your family is your safety net. Like, we're woven together. We are there for each other. Through the good times, through the bad times, no matter how bad of a fit you're going to throw, I'm still going to love you. And no matter what you say. And so it's just been a journey. But for us, that was what we really, and so when you sum us up, it was so cute too. The other day, we are also business. We have several businesses, and we're homeschooling our kids. And so I was in a board meeting, and so my kids come with me, and they sit in on my leadership meetings. And so Nicholas was in there the other day, but I tell them, like, you have to be quiet, and, like, you have to be respectful. So they're sitting in there, and and we were talking about team. And here Nicholas, in front of all my staff, is like, yeah, Mom, power, there's power in team. Teamwork makes the dream work. And everybody just
Hey,
erupted, but he was like, he knew that's what that meant. And so I was like, well, there you have it, folks. It's at home and at work, it's all the same, but it was super cute.
Yeah.
that's how you reinforce concepts on your team, is you bring your kids in, and then they say the same thing, and suddenly everybody's listening, and that's how you do it, right?
Yeah.
But okay, so you said right there something, Kristi. You have to trust your family because your
Yeah.
family is behind you, and I think that there is a lot of wisdom in that statement. I can imagine coming from. I don't remember, Randon, if you said, some of the kids that you adopted are siblings or not siblings, but coming from multiple families, multiple birth families, that's a learned skill on
Yes.
being able to trust your family unit. And I think for a lot of Family ID families, maybe, that are walking into this intentional direction thing, not with infants, but with teenagers or
Yeah.
preteens, right? There's a lot of history where I couldn't trust my family.
Yeah.
And we know, you guys know, and I know, trust is built over time by
Yes.
continuing to follow through on things that you say. And so kudos to you for following through on things that you say, because that's a learned skill and it takes time to develop.
Well, it's
Absolutely.
consistency. And I think that the thing that they didn't really teach us, even as our children were coming into our family, is that we were disrupting their natural birth order too. So we were having firstborns that were coming in, and now they're the middle child, or they're the second boy, or and so, I mean, we had to go in with some serious intention on how we were going to raise them and knowing who they were, because when you come into a family like that, it was a complete learning curve for us. And so, again, we were just trying to navigate it. And that was when the light bulb came on that we are going to have to do this thing with great intention and forethought and plan. Of how we want them to develop in leadership and what we want them to do, because there was like no training on that. And so then even the trust of trusting an older child or trusting a younger child, and just all of the things that come with it that they just don't tell you. And so we had a lot of firsts.
Well, and we have 3 boys that are the firstborns.
Yeah.
You know, from where they came from. Now, they were little when they came to us, but we have seen, and you know, there's books out there that talk about the birth order, but we've seen it in action, and that's where we've had to navigate through it. And Kristi was saying having trust, but it's like also that foundation of Jesus in our life, but also a foundation as well as family. And that's one thing we did gain from Family ID is, you know, your brothers and sisters are closer to you than your best friends. Yes. And that's something we really push, that it's like, well, I'd rather hang out there with my friends. No, we'd rather be with our family and then be a light to our friends out there. And so those foundations, and then having, you know, our God is he never changes. He was and he is and he will be. And that's where, you know, our family having a vision and having a unconditional love, because they always had conditions in their lives where they came from that affected the love, and it was unconditional love. No matter what you do, I still love you. And I don't like what you might have done, and we're going to work through that, but I love you, and that'll never change. And I'll always be there behind you to help you and encourage you. So those are some of those foundational things that we feel like even Family ID has really watered into us and helped grow and pull out of us even that we didn't know we had in us too.
Yeah.
Well, I will make sure that Greg pays you guys for this endorsement because you trained really, really well for the things to say about family. No, I'm kidding, but it was the same. It was the same for Gina and I a decade ago when we walked through it and the light bulb went off and some of those things, and we say the same things to our kids. No, you are best friends, and you will always be best friends, and you will always treat each other with, like, past that, there's no exceptions. There's no, well, I mean, that's just the rule. The rule is you treat each other with love and kindness.
Absolutely.
No, or else, right? Like, it's not, there's not it. But I had never thought about
that are actually siblings, and so they have the same mother and the same father, so they tend to pull. And then we have 2 sets.
Brothers.
Okay.
And they have that natural God-given pull to each other, but then also accepting the entire family. And then all of them have siblings outside of our home too. And so learning how to love and navigate through all of that. But your heart's big enough. That's what we say. Like, our heart is big enough to love them all, and you can do it. But it is a lot.
That is, that's a great statement. Your heart is big enough to love them all. But that's a dynamic, right? That's a dynamic that you guys have had to learn to navigate, is how do you deal with external family that is siblings, but it's not your family unit. And that's, you are a wealth of knowledge. And I hope at the end of this, you will at least allow some people maybe that are walking a similar path to extract some of that knowledge and get to know you a little bit better. And one of you, I can't remember which one said this, but it was, you learned or determined that, oh man, if we're going to do this, we have to be crazy intentional on it.
Yeah.
And I can only, again, Gina and I, there's 2 of us, 2 parents and 2 kids. So there's 4 of us. I mean, we're tiny compared to you guys. Look at that. You look at our family, and don't understand what we do with all of our free time. But for but but for you, you can't even accidentally get everybody in the car and to church, right?
Right.
Even a simple task has to be intentional. For us, we can accidentally end up at the same place together because we all get in the car, but it's not for you. And it's those little things.
It's definitely even last night we were at our pastor's house and we were like, okay, roll call, like before we pulled out the drive, because we were just making sure we did have all of our kids, because
and he has 5 children, right. And then the family that was there also visiting has at least 12. I mean, it's a lot.
Okay. So you 3 families are the entire congregation.
The whole church, right.
So Kristi does a roll call, make sure we got the right kids in the vehicle.
We have the right children too. It wasn't just the number, but the right kids,
the right ones.
That's funny. Yeah, we can play man-to-man defense.
Yeah.
You've been in zone for a long time. Zone defend. Okay, so what practically do you do? So we've talked conceptually a lot. How do you navigate stuff? And it's important to live intentional. But what are just a couple pieces that you don't have to tell everything and all your family secrets, but what are some pieces of things that you do practically to live with intention in your family?
Well, there's some non-negotiables.
There are. Yeah.
And one non-negotiable is that we always eat at the table and in the evening. And the older kids that are getting jobs and starting to, even Hunter, he's within a couple months of moving out, and he's already talking about, and actually he's already put his money down for his place. So, it's happening. And he said, he's like, well, I'll be home for supper every night. And
so it'll save me money.
He loves to talk. I'm telling you, he loves to talk. He loves to eat good. Mm-hmm. 19 years, or almost 19, that he eats well. But that's a non-negotiable. That is such a time that we have with the kids that it's like when you put a plate of food in front of them, they start talking. We learned that in youth ministry. You feed them, they come. And, if you got pizza in front of those youth kids, they were talking to you and hanging out and stuff like that. But food-wise, we sit there and we visit. We have a few games we do, the high part of our day, low part of our day, and then you can discuss it. So those are some things that are intentional, non-negotiable, that we are a family at the table. We're not strung out in our bedrooms eating or in front of a TV eating. It's like focus. And Kristi and I we shut the cell phones off and put them up. Every once in a while I hear it ding and I start looking and she...
Well, the kids remind us too.
The kids yeah. And so we hold ourselves accountable too in that.
But that was like a small thing that we did that from the jump. Like we even sat down, like with from the very, very beginning. That was just a very small thing that we had written down of just because you cannot just start doing. I guess you could, but in order to stick with it, we started with a few things. Like we started with our mission statement, and then we kind of wrote down about 5 to 10 things that we were like, this is what we want to implement. And then we also said we were going to set time aside for Randon and I each year to go away for a weekend, reevaluate where we are, because the children grow and different things happen, and what do we want to keep, what do we want to add, what didn't work, where do we feel like our kids are going. And so we set that weekend retreat once a year, which is really hard for us to do, but we do it, and then we reevaluate. And so throughout the years we've just added to our list, and it's kind of grown. And so sometimes people look at us like, wow, you have it. And it's like, no, we did not have it all together in the beginning. We didn't start with this great plan. It just started with a few things of intention. And then we built goals, and we just started building upon that throughout the years. And like now our table talks have, because it would go from would you rather and different little fun, silly games too. We just started this year having, do you rebuttal or negate? Do you negate or affirm? And we're talking about political issues at the table. And so we bring a pretty political topic to the table. And it's pretty impressive what these kids and how we can. And so now we're talking about politics and different things that are happening at the table, and it's pretty fun. And we don't always agree with what they say, but they don't. But it gives us time to talk and find out why they're thinking what they think and why we believe what we believe. And it's been pretty. It's intense.
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
intense, but we like it.
That's good. So non-negotiables, small steps, and I heard another one in there. What was it? Oh, you don't have to take everything all at once.
Yeah.
Right? You don't have to just do all of it from the very beginning. But non-negotiables. Oh, and here's the question I had. Okay, that's what came up in my mind is you mentioned earlier that both of you have businesses. You're business owners. So I'm thinking from a perspective of perhaps there's a family out there that says, hey, I would love to turn off my cell phone at dinner, but there's no way I ever possibly could because I run a business and somebody's going to call me with some fire that I need to put out. I would love to do that, but that's outside of my reach. How do you do that? As business owners, that's one very small practical thing. We're going to eat dinner and I'm going to turn the cell phone off and put it away, or I'm going to put it on mute and set it over on the counter. How do you do that?
Yeah. And I'll tell you, I mean, we are in our businesses, people need us all the time. And there is always something that's needed after hours, or, I mean, because we have thriving businesses, but it sends a message to your child and to your young adult that they are more important than anything else that is coming your way. And so there may be times where if we hear the cell phone ringing and it's a certain ring and it's a couple of times, Randon will excuse himself and say, hey, let me go get that and we'll come right back. But that's not that often. And I mean, I've even had to, and I will even tell my clients sometimes, like, I'll wait because they can wait an hour for my kids. And I'll even tell them, hey, I'm getting back to you because I said I was having dinner with my kids and we sit down at the table. And so, but I'm available now for you. And so, but it's also teaching them that they need to have boundaries in their life for their family, and they deserve, and I have to say, we've learned this over time. This wasn't something like we just did because it wasn't always like that.
Yeah.
And then we've had to just prioritize that they are important, and setting boundaries with our clients, setting boundaries with our businesses, and even my team. I have a staff, and we minister a lot that family, it's God, marriage, family, and then work. And that's kind of how the order is. And God has so honored that. Like, our businesses have blown up because we've put that pecking order in. You would think, and people ask us all the time and we share it, but we prioritize it, and our kids know it, and it's taken time to do it, but it is super healthy, and they feel their importance when we give them that time, and they don't get second. No. So
yeah, I can see that. Hey, how can you guys teach me about work? How you do so great? How are you so successful? No problem. I just move it to the bottom of the list. That's what I move my work to the bottom of the list. And but that's what it is, right? Hey, I'm choosing purposefully these priorities, and I think it tells your clients or your customers or your coworkers or your team, hey, look, I'm going to live out the values that I proclaim. And this is one way that I'm going to do this is you can't, if I'm unreachable between 5:30 and 6:30, I'll get back with you afterwards when I can, but this time is set aside for my family. And two, I think I can see that it could give your family and children permission for them to do that with their friends and with their work in the future as well, right? Hey, guys, let me show you. We've lived our lives in a manner that it's okay to take dinner and not be completely on call on your cell phone.
Yeah.
I mean, gosh, not to go back to the date that you mentioned there, Randon, in the 90s, but that might have been before cell phones.
Yes, it was.
There was an age when somebody was off work, they were unreachable.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Isn't that crazy? Isn't that wild just to think about for a second that, hey, when somebody was out fishing on a lake with their dad, there was not a phone in the boat.
That's right.
Isn't that weird? But anyways, okay. One practical thing, and this is the way that I ended up connecting with you. One practical thing that I think you do is you do a coming of age type ceremony.
Yes.
That,
right? And
yes.
this is the story that I got with your 12 or 13-year-old daughter. Expand on that. Tell me and our listeners more about that.
Well, this is just blown up in our family since the very beginning we started this, and this is something that it captured our hearts during our family ID conference we were at with Greg, and it was at 12 years old, and it started with our oldest son, Hunter. We started that, and it's just becoming from being a little boy to a young man, that transition, and we take that and we plan a trip, something that fits them. For him, he is an outdoorsman, loves hunting, fishing. So we took him camping, um, did some fishing, things like that. But Kristi had really set it up great where each one of the grandparents got to write a letter to him about becoming a young man and what they see him becoming and just the excitement they have for him and his future and how much they love him. I mean, it was just super details. And we presented that to him on that trip. And to this day, he goes back, and every once in a while he'd be like, and my dad, he passed away 3 years ago, but he had written him a letter, and he said, I was going through my book when I was 12, and I just was reading the words that Papa wrote to me, and it really blesses our hearts that the grandparents are still speaking,
Right.
and then even us and his siblings got to write letters, and each
coaches,
one of them,
we had coaches, some teachers,
people that were big in his life, and those things, and it's just like it was an excitement. And then the next generation that comes up, another kid, they saw what happened, and they cannot wait until they're 12. And we have
go through now.
Yes, 4. So Emma Kate was number 4, and that's the one that you'd seen. We had taken her. She went on, did a picnic in the park with Kristi and I, and we just spent a day with her doing things. And I gave her a ring that I picked out for her, a purity ring. And we were in the park here in our town, and we were in the same swing. Kristi and I met where I proposed to her way back years ago, and Kristi and I were sitting there and got to talk to her, and she was just soaking up every second of that moment, like it was like she had never experienced. It was probably exceeded her dreams, because they look forward to that so much, and that was the post you saw online that Kristi had put out there. But those are some things. But it's 12, 16. 18 and 21 is those dates that we have that are milestones for age and next steps in life and responsibilities that are blessings. Am I missing anything there?
Well, and 12 is always a big one because that is really a year where we can start talking to them about spouses and what they're looking for in a spouse.
And praying for their spouse.
Yeah, and you think, because when they're not dating, that's the time to start talking to them when they don't have and just because they're still in that innocent, sweet stage. And so just kind of setting the stage of like, what kind of woman do you want to be? And just setting some of those goals and setting like, what are their dreams and writing them down of like how they're going into their teenage years, what role we're going to play, what we're promising to them as parents, what God says in the Word, and just kind of setting the foundation and talking about some hard stuff. Yep. And so so far this has been our 4th time, and every time it's just when they get that one-on-one, face-to-face, just attention, it's so cool what just comes out of it. Yeah. And Emma Kate, she was our last one. She was like, I've waited my whole life for this day. And it wasn't anything special. We're like, oh, you're 12 whole years. And so it was but that was something, again, that we had set back, because you have to plan it. And that's something that we planned, 10 years ago, that when working up to this day, and that was one of those non-negotiable things, like, we're going to do this. And so it was intentionally planned years ahead so that it didn't creep up on us. It wasn't like, and we had a lot of forethought that went into it. And that's what's made it successful, because we've planned them. We think we put some thought into them. Part of the retreat that we do is we work on the calendar for the year, set up their date nights, set up what's coming up, what events are coming up that year,
And their date nights are with us. We will take one of them out, dress up, go out to a nice restaurant, and it's a one-on-one time, and they look forward to that, and we try to do that.
They each get 2 a year.
Yes. There's been a few times we'll have to change those days, but we get them in there. It's awesome, but they just soak that up. They love it.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for clarifying that you were setting up dates nights with you guys.
Us, not
you were organizing their dates with their
we're not setting
No.
Tonight, this night on March, you can go out with Tommy.
Right.
Right.
No, that
we
is.
really have to, and that's the thing too. Is with your schedule, it's like it's not easy to say, and so it's really saying, okay, this is April, this is Emma Kate's month where we're going to do something. Nothing that costs money, but it's like Hunter. He took me out fishing. He got to plan the event. We don't call it a date with the older kids because that's not cool, and so it's an event. But I went fishing with him. And we just, hung out at the pond and fished. And Randon's had to go and look for shoes with the girls and stuff that he, But
absolutely,
you bet. Hey, best times, right? Best times you could have. Well, I think that is a testament to your intentionality to set the calendar that far ahead, to think about it, to understand not only what's important to both of you, but what is going to be important to that child. And as Greg would put it, that is fighting for the hearts of your children, is looking from their eyes what's going to be important and making that important to you. Okay, so if somebody was sitting or listening and they said, man, I wish that I could be as intentional as the Millers because they've got it all figured out. They know exactly what they're doing. What would you tell them? What's one piece of advice that you would give them to live more intentionally today or this year than they did yesterday or last year?
I would say plan. And the plan and the vision, because things can change, and you might have a different feeling down the road, and then you look back at what my plan was, and you stick to that plan for that year. You stick to that vision for that year. And I would say if you have a good plan and sticking to it, it's going to make it easier when you have your ups and downs, because don't go off on emotions. Don't go off of seasons of, kids acting a certain way. And going off of that, but stick to the plan, because they need you to be consistent. They need you to stick to the plan, because when they're at that age, there's ups and downs, believe me.
I was just thinking, there's been times where we planned an event and I didn't even like them at the time. But I'm like, no, it's a moment, and I love them, but there's been some times where I'm like, I don't even like you at this moment, but we're gonna go do this together. Yeah. But it helps you.
But that helps that moment.
It does.
That's the thing.
It does. It does. That reinforces, Randon, something you talked about earlier of just being consistent and saying, I love you regardless of what you do or how you act. I might not like that stuff, but I like you. And so it is, that teamed with Dietrich Bonhoeffer made a statement years ago, and I'm going to butcher it. But in his book, he talked about how at the beginning, the relationship, he's talking about marriage and the love, right? The love bonds people and holds the marriage together. But later, the marriage holds the love together.
Wow.
And when you think about that, that's what you're saying on highs and lows with the kids of, because I love you, I'm going to plan this even when you are not being nice or you are misbehaving. I'm going to plan this. And then when that day shows up, even if you're not feeling it,
right,
or they're not feeling it, dadgummit, we're going on this event together because it's on the calendar, and this is what family does. We are consistent, and we fight for each other.
Absolutely.
And we really find like sometimes those are ending up being our best times together, because the walls kind of come down.
Yep.
And the things that we were working through, there's just when you pour love over it, it just kind of like it melts the other stuff away. And those have sometimes been our most significant times when we push forward, when we push through the hard times, and do it even when you don't feel it, because we're a lot of times we're talking like it's not about emotion, and sometimes we have to do things even though we don't feel like we want to. And I would say for me, for moms out there, I think that was the thing I struggled with at the beginning, is sometimes we want things to be perfect, and we want it, if it doesn't look perfect, then I can't really put it together. And we kind of wrote on our thing that perfection hinders progress. And so it doesn't have to be perfect to get started. You don't have to get like all these special things with your first, maybe you're setting up a date night with your daughter or the son, and you want to have like this dress, and you want to have, it's like, sometimes it's like, just do it. Just do it. Even though it's not perfect, get yourself into the motion of forward momentum and just do it, even though it's not perfect. And the date or the thing that you planned may have gone bad, but they always remember the stuff that doesn't go right. Those are always the stories to talk about.
Or if money's tight, make a sandwich and go to the park.
Yes, it doesn't have to cost anything.
Yeah. They want your attention. They don't need your flash always and all the fancies. It's just like looking them in the eyes by yourself and talking and giving it to. It's amazing how kids just light up, and even in the older ones, it's like what they crave. They crave some attention, and when we have a large family, and sometimes it's tough to give them one-on-ones, but that's why we have to be intentional on it and plan it. So.
That's good. Guys, thank you for this, for your wisdom, for your heart, for your stories, and thank you for your service, laying your life down for the kingdom. And on behalf of your kids, thank you, right, for laying your life down for your kids. You have done that. Thank you for sharing this with Family ID. If you're watching or listening, aren't the Millers amazing? Their story is so fantastic. Not that they get it right. You guys don't get it right all the time. I can promise you that, right? Because you are human. You are human. But thank you. Thank you for what you're doing for God's kingdom. And thank you for sharing this, that other families can learn, that I can learn, that I can take this home and implement in my family as well. So for all of us listening, thanks for joining us at Family ID. We'll see you next time.